and see me, if one of you two would be so kind to, in that form to the right of the screen, you'll see it. It's, your email and name may already be in there. Type in a question, say, Austin, I hear you loud and clear. And Nathan, will you say something just to test and make sure that they can hear you too?
Yep, this is Nathan here with you guys. Going to be an awesome time.
It's going to be a great time. Oh, there's Nathan for those that want to see him. Let me see if I get an email here from anyone. We'll give it a few minutes. Just, we've got 4 people in here now. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. And we'll get started in just a minute. We've got a few more people coming in. I put out a tweet. And I got a question. We've already got a question and a need. So we'll talk about how to ask questions during the presentation here in a little bit. And great. Thank you, Alan, for confirming that. Alan, were you able to hear Nathan as well? And see Nathan? Nathan, say one more thing one more time.
Welcome, Alan. Glad you could join us.
Yeah. All right. Let's give it 2 more minutes here, and then we'll get started. Nathan, thank you for being so flexible and being on with us today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You cut out a little bit there. And yep, great. Joe can hear us both too. So well, I'm going to go ahead and get started, do a little bit of an introduction here, and I'm sure we'll probably have a few more people join us. We're going to be talking about same-sex marriage, what that means for your church. I know many of you are pastors that are in the Antioch Oasis International Network, and you're concerned about what do the new Supreme Court laws mean for you. We're going to talk about that today. So, all right. Nathan, I'm going to put up our the presentation for today and go ahead and get started. I'm just going to ask one more time to make sure that everyone can see how you can successfully navigate the new same-sex marriage laws as we're going through this. If someone would just say, we see it, Austin. And Nathan, if you'll talk over it, just to make sure that we're not seeing you whenever you talk.
Yeah, I can see it on my screen and good to go.
So, great. Looks good. I see it there too. Thank you all for being here. I know this is an important topic. I know that many of you are concerned. What does this mean for our church? That's what we're going to talk about today on this webinar. Just a few things up front so that there's no confusion and you don't have to feel like you have to write everything down. At the end today, we're going to have a live Q&A. If you will use that box to the right of the screen that you're watching, or if you happen to have clicked on the YouTube link and you're watching on YouTube, you can send an email to my email address at the bottom there, austin@wilkersonlegal.com. I'll get those emails while I'm presenting, and then we'll go through each of them whenever we get done with the front end of our presentation. We are recording this. We're going to send this replay out to everyone that signed up and registered. If you are watching the live link and you did not register, send me your contact information. You can send that again to the email at the bottom there, austin@wilkersonlegal.com, and we'll make sure you get that. All the slides will be there. And see, people are already using the form to make jokes, Nathan. Some people are glad.
No surprise there.
Some people are glad that I locked in the presentation so they don't have to watch us. So you'll see us in a little bit. So, but appreciate the humor. The other thing is, if you do find this useful, when we send you the link, feel free to share the replay, email it to your colleagues, get it out there. It's a great introduction to Antioch Oasis International Network, what a resource they can be. And it's a great resource for them to get some questions answered. And if they go to the replay page, they can even ask questions that are specific to them. So, and most importantly, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I know that you're taking time. I hope that this is a very valuable time for you today and enjoyable as well. So, a little bit about me. Some of you may know my grandfather if you've been around Shady Grove. I'm a Shady Grover. I went to high school there. All my cousins went to high school there. If you were ever around the high school, you're probably aware of one of us. But my grandfather, Jim Morrison, worked with Pastor Olin for many years. And I've been a fan of Pastor Olin's since I went to church there at Shady Grove. And after going to Shady Grove, I went to Oral Roberts University. Then I went to Regent Law School, where I got my law degree. I recently started my own legal practice representing churches, ministries, and nonprofits with the goal to help those that were unable to really afford the services that I was providing at the firm I was at previously. Legal help can be expensive, and I'm trying to come up with technological ways to reach out to lower the cost and improve the service as well. My family, this is what I'm most proud of. This is why I do what I do. This is why I work. That's my wife, Elizabeth, next to me. We have 5 kids. That's Mariah on the left. She's from Ethiopia. She's holding the blue balloon. Then Clara, she was born in Irving or in Las Colinas. She's 10 years old. Justice is our baby boy. He's from Masindi, Uganda, adopted from there. And we adopted him 2 years ago. Stella's also from Masindi, Uganda. We adopted her 2 years ago. We adopted both of them. That was our second international adoption. And then Tessa, our 5-year-old, is on the end. So, Nathan, I did not show you your slide yet. And so I want to give you a little bit of time to talk a little bit about Antioch Oasis International Network, because it's possible we're going to send this replay out to people that aren't as familiar with what you guys do. But I stole a picture from your Facebook page of you
Awesome.
and your wonderful wife. But tell us a little bit about Antioch Oasis for those that may not know, and kind of what you guys are doing right now.
Good thing you picked a picture of my one with my wife, because she's definitely the better half and makes me a better man. But anyways, most of you guys on here, you know about AOI. But for those of you that may be watching later, Antioch Oasis International, just a network of churches and pastors and ministry leaders. And our desire is just to be a support to you guys in any and every way that we can. Super relational, have monthly meetings in several different regions and yearly retreats and all kind of stuff, and like to do things like this that can hopefully be a tool for you guys to have and help keep your church in the know of things that are going on and help keep you healthy. Also have great leadership with Pastor Olin and the apostolic team that helps him. A bunch of amazing men that are there to talk to for any pastor or minister that's going through a hard time and needs some help, needs some support. We love to be there. So that's what we're about. You can check us out more at aoinetwork.com and learn more about us there if you don't know much about us. So I'm excited for today and what Austin's going to do. He's a good friend of mine. I was in his class in high school. Definitely a respected family and respected man. So we definitely can trust him and his input and his insight. So look forward to today, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate that. With that, let's jump into why we're all here. Let's talk about what do the new laws mean for you. If you're looking at the screen, you'll see that I have a tweet there from SBC Life, which is the official journal of the Southern Baptist Convention. They tweeted this shortly after the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage. And they wrote, written church policies will not only prevent embarrassment for the church, but would avoid charges of discrimination. And so that's the big thing we're going to talk about, is having written church policies and getting them done now so that there aren't charges of discrimination later. So I'll go ahead and tell you what I'm going to tell you. Here are the two big takeaways. Let's get our policies written down, and let's do it now rather than in response to an employee, a volunteer, someone coming to the church and saying, I'd like for you to marry me and my boyfriend, a male marrying a male, or a female marrying a female. And for churches that primarily share our biblical worldview, that's where they stand on this issue, is that traditional marriage is between a man and a woman. And there are churches out there that interpret scripture differently. And we'll talk about that today, on why it's important to talk about that this is a scriptural issue and support it accordingly. Here are the three things. This is kind of what we're going to walk through today. Briefly, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court case. None of you are lawyers. You don't want to spend your time hearing about what the justices wrote and the case. What we're mostly going to spend our time on is on step 2, step 3 today. What does this mean for you, and what do you need to do? The current legal landscape, the Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell versus Hodges. This is that landmark case that recently came out at the end of June, deciding that for the entire United States, that same-sex couples are entitled to the fundamental right to marry under our Constitution. I don't think anyone was surprised by it, but it was a close decision, 5-4. And there certainly were reasons why even some of the justices that voted for this decision might have sided with the 4, and it could have gone the other way, but it didn't. And so this is the law of the land. So what do we do about it? We're going to talk about that. I do want to just briefly highlight my two favorite dissents. Chief Justice Roberts, he wrote, 5 lawyers have closed the debate and enacted their own vision of marriage. Stealing this issue from the people may cast a cloud over same-sex marriage. He wasn't against same-sex marriage, even though he voted against, he was in the dissent on this case. He just said it's up to the legislators. That's why we have the division of the executive, legislative, and judicial branch, because the legislators write the law and we interpret it. However, this was a dissent. This is not the law of the land. My favorite dissent was Scalia's, and effectively he was saying 5 elite West Coast, East Coast, elite law school lawyers decided for the rest of the 320 million Americans what the law is now. And he said there's a lot of people in middle America, like Texas, like Dallas, like Houston. I know there's a lot of AOI people in Chicago, that in middle America, well, here's what he wrote. Today's decree says that my ruler and the ruler of 320 million Americans coast to coast is a majority of the 9 lawyers on the Supreme Court, who primarily went to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and the other elite law schools. So that's who made the call for the rest of us. But what does this mean for you? Let me quickly go through these. Are you required? These are the things that pastors have been asking me, the pastors that I've been updating their bylaws, their policies, writing their statements on marriage. These are their questions. And if you don't see the question that you want answered here, please write it in the form next to this presentation, and I'll answer it here at the end. Are you required to conduct a marriage ceremony for same-sex couples? No. The First Amendment still protects you. All right? Freedom of religion, and potentially even freedom of speech, and freedom of association will protect a minister from being required to conduct marriage ceremonies. Yes, civilly. You've seen what's happened in Kentucky. Yes, civilly, our civil governments are required to recognize same-sex marriages, not civil unions, marriages. And that's a civil issue. But on the spiritual side, there's nothing in the decision or anything in law that would require us to do that right now. But if you're on this webinar, you know that there's an agenda, that there's a strategy, there's a legal strategy to move same-sex couples, homosexual behavior, transgendered individuals into the norm. Not only that's normal and acceptable, but also protected by law. Same as race, same as gender, same as age. That's the push. That's the strategy. And the Supreme Court decision in Obergefell v. Hodges was just one of the steps in that. And so what I've said is I don't want any of the churches that I'm working with to be an additional step in that. And that's what we're talking about today, how you can protect your church. What about your facilities? This is the big one. Are you required to allow your facilities to be used for same-sex marriages? Same answer, no, you are not. For the same reasons, it was a civil decision, not anything that said that same-sex or homosexual individuals are protected, are a protected class under our Constitution. Do you have to admit an active homosexual as a member of your church, or if you have a ministry with members? No. Once again, First Amendment, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of association prevents the courts from enforcing that right now. I'll talk about here in a little bit how you can put yourself at risk by doing certain things and acting in certain ways. And in fact, I'm going to go back on the facilities. Some of you may be aware of the New Jersey church that had an amphitheater on the boardwalk in New Jersey, right there next to the casinos and the beaches. And they had opened up their facility, their amphitheater, to public marriages. Anyone who paid the fee, regardless of their statement of faith or what they believed or whether they were a member of the church, could use the facility to have their marriage and or reception. So a same-sex couple came, this was in New Jersey, and said, we'd like to get married here. They said, no, we're a religious organization. We're owned by, I believe it was the Methodist Church, but don't hold me to that. And we just can't let our facilities be used for that. It went to New Jersey State Court. So once again, this is not federal court. This is in New Jersey under their laws. And it was determined by those judges that they had opened up their amphitheater as, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, you can't see me right now, but a public accommodation. Just like Walmart opens themselves up to anyone, just like Kroger, whatever store you might be used to, Tom Thumb, Target, they have opened themselves as a public accommodation. And under New Jersey law, there's no case like this in Texas yet, but there will be more and more cases if it comes up that when it becomes a public accommodation, it's open to everyone, regardless of their transgender nature, their homosexual behavior, what they believe, their spiritual beliefs about Jesus, about the devil, whether they're a Satanist or not. When they opened up as a public accommodation, they opened themselves up to everyone. And so they had to shut that facility down. And we'll talk about how you can protect your church in regards to that now. Do you have to accept an active homosexual as an employee or volunteer? This is where the discrimination can be very hairy. And what we were talking about with that tweet from the Southern Baptist Convention is that what happens if, and this will happen I talked to 30 pastors last week about this very issue too. It's going to happen sometime, someplace where an employee or a volunteer comes out and says, I'm an active homosexual. And in fact, one of my pastors last week told me they had it happen. They had a teacher at their Christian school who had been there for 2 years, or maybe longer. I think they said they'd been there for maybe 8 or 10 years. But they said for the last 2 years, they've been married in a same-sex arrangement, and they wanted health benefits for their spouse, their same-sex spouse. And I want to help you today get those documents and learn that, hey, we've got to write it now so that when that employee, when that teacher, when that pastor changes their worldview or changes their behavior or comes out of the closet, that it's not about them. It's not about Bob. It's not about Mary. It's not about any particular person or their choices. It's about the policies that the church has set and what the Bible says about marriage. And that's not discriminatory because you're applying your policies. You're not, and it's not about any single individual because we're writing them now. This is, I'm probably going to do a webinar in the future on this. Nathan and I have talked about doing another one for Antioch Oasis, talking about what can you do in regards to this upcoming election? What can you say? And what can you say about same-sex marriage? You know, if Hillary Clinton is a proponent for same-sex marriage, what can you say from your pulpit in regards to voting for Hillary Clinton? What you cannot do is a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. And that's what every church is, whether they've filed any paperwork with the IRS or not. Every church is a 501c3. You cannot use the name of a candidate from the pulpit. You cannot say, vote for Mike Huckabee. He's our guy. You cannot say, do not vote for Trump or don't vote for Hillary. They don't get it on religious issues. What you can say is the second question there, can you share your religious views on these issues? Of course. That's what we're called to do as pastors, as ministers, as preachers, as evangelists. We're called to speak to our culture and talk about what's right and wrong and what the Bible says about it. However, if you want to keep your tax exemption and not be the poster boy on a lawsuit, I recommend you do not name candidates from the pulpit or at any official event. You can go to rallies for Mike Huckabee as an individual, as long as it's clear you're not there as the pastor of the church. I'm here on my own. I love Mike Huckabee. I want to support him. I'm not here for Shady Grove Church. I'm here to represent Austin Wilkerson. But I'm voting for Mike Huckabee. But doing that during a church service would not be appropriate. But you can say, we need a candidate for president. We need a president who is not going to support the abortion of millions of babies and fund Planned Parenthood. We're not going to support a president who is trying to get same-sex marriage equality beyond what the courts have already done. We're going to stand against that on what we believe the Bible says. And here's what the Bible says about it. My pastor gave a great sermon after this, and he said, we have the difficult balance of loving these people who are going through this sin and struggling with same-sex attraction, homosexual behavior, and knowing that it's wrong, and also saying, but that's not okay, but we still love you. It's a difficult balancing act, and as pastors, we're called to do that. Last frequently asked question, should you update your statement of faith, bylaws, other policies? Yes, that's what we're going to talk about here for the third part of our webinar. What do you do? What do you need to update? What do you need to focus on to get things right for your church? Nathan, I know you have your mic off. Do you have any thoughts or anything before we go to this next section about what we've talked about so far?
No, I mean, I think most of the guys are right there with that. I think this next section is going to be real key for them to know the real logistics and practicals of, okay, now how do I protect myself from those things? So,
yeah. I just got one email. I apologize. I got it a little while ago. I'm going to email the link to this person. They were trying to get in, and this is absolutely the meat of what we're talking about today. So I do want to get this to them. Bear with me. I apologize. I just got the email. Yeah. 1 second. Apologize for the dead air. got it off to her. Great. Okay. Getting back to what we're talking about here. Churches, ministries, Christian schools. Here's what every religious organization needs to do. And this is for churches, ministries, and schools. I'll talk about churches and Christian schools, a few other things they have to do. If you are just a ministry, these are the things that you need to update. If you're a church, you need to update these, and Christian schools do too. Your statement of faith or a statement on marriage and sex. Here's the deal. Not all of us. I spoke to a group of AG pastors last week, and I don't know everyone's affiliation or denomination that's on our webinar today. But if you control your statement of faith, putting a statement on marriage and on gender, I'm recommending that for all of my clients. For those of you that may be an Assemblies of God church, that's what AG is. I don't know if everybody knows that. I grew up in the AG, so that's what I call it. Assemblies of God church. The statement of faith is made by the denomination, but you can write a statement on marriage and sex and get that incorporated in your corporate documents as well. What I'm doing for my clients, the ones that I've helped so far, is I'm putting it in their statement of faith, a short sentence, but I'm writing a longer statement on marriage, gender, and sexual identity. I'm writing a longer statement on that with Bible verses and support so that it's very clear that this is a faith issue. So I want to talk about kind of a line, if you would. So in your mind, think with me. Over on the left side is spiritual, and over on the right side of our screen is secular. And so a judge can make a court decision on secular issues. So if the question before the judge is whose name is on the property deed, the judge can decide that. The judge can decide if a contract is binding or not on secular issues. If you have a contract with a painting contractor, and did you pay him or not? A judge can make a determination on that. On the left side, on the spiritual side, a judge cannot tell us whether or not the infilling of the Holy Spirit is initially evidenced by speaking in tongues or not. That's a religious spiritual issue, and judges cannot speak to that. And so our entire goal with this is to make sure that we make it very clear to employees, volunteers, members of our church, the courts, the government, everyone, that this is a spiritual issue for us. It's not a secular issue. It's not an employment issue. It's a statement of faith issue. And that's why we absolutely need that. So, sorry, Nathan, I clicked on you for a second. Statement on biblical authority. This is the second most important statement that I'm recommending for my clients. And this is who has the biblical, and I don't mean is the Bible our authority. For all of us on this webinar, the Bible is our authority. I'm asking, who are the men or women at your church that decide what the Bible means? So when the Bible says, and I don't want to, so Hezekiah 22:20, I'm going to pick a verse that doesn't even exist. Hezekiah is not a real book. But how does Hezekiah 22:20 apply to our church? Who is the person or people responsible for making that decision on what the Bible means? That's what I mean when I say we have a statement on biblical authority. We need a statement that clearly lays out who are the final arbiters, the final decision makers of what the Bible means. And I recommend that be the board or a separate committee. I don't recommend it be one person, because once again, that raises the option for there to be a claim of discrimination. That Pastor so-and-so, Pastor Austin Wilkerson said, he doesn't like me, and so he just made the Bible mean what it means. No, we have a committee, we have a board that determine this is what marriage is. It's between one man and one woman, and that's what marriage means to our church, and that's in our statement of faith. Religious employment criteria, putting in your application or in your job descriptions that adhering to and affirming your statement of faith and your statement on marriage and gender and sexuality are that they're affirming it and that they're willing to live in accordance with it. And I realize that we live in a sinful world. We're all sinners, and we're all not going to live perfectly. And people are going to violate even the things that we believe. But there's a difference between sinning and living in a state of unrepentant sin. And that's where the line's drawn, is that if you're going to come out as a same-sex couple, that's counter to what we believe. And so we can't continue to employ you. It's not about you, Jim. It's about our policies. And let me say this. I want this to apply to all of our employees, our janitors. Man, I should ask Nathan. I forget his name. I forget his first name, but Slayton. Do you remember?
Yeah, Larry Slayton.
Larry Slayton. I couldn't remember his name last week. I shared about him. I would talk to him about God whenever I would see him in the hallway. And he ministered to me. I don't know if many of you others got to meet him and spend time with him. He always was exhibiting Christ, following Christ. And it really ministered to me. We would talk about the Bible. We would talk. And he, if you remember, at least at that point, was the janitor and did a lot of the cleaning. And I love that. That's what I want for the janitors of my clients, for the receptionist. Every single person at your church is a minister. Your receptionist is getting calls from people in distress that need help, that need prayer. He has to be ready to pray with them and to put these into the job descriptions and to make sure that everyone realizes that there's a spiritual dimension to the work they're doing for the church, moves them on that paradigm from the right secular side over to the left spiritual side, so that it's clear, hey, no matter what position you're in with our church, even as a volunteer, we're expecting you to be ready to pray, to minister, and to exhibit our statement of faith to others in the community. And that's why you can't volunteer. That's why you can't be in the choir as an openly gay person. And that's what we decided with our statement of faith. Facility use policy. This is where the danger lies, is that this facility use policy is where the legal strategy is headed for same-sex couples, the pro-homosexual legal strategy. They're going to do just like they did in New Jersey, try to get a church that's gotten lax, hasn't asked people to sign their statement of faith before getting married, and attack using their facilities. Oh, you opened it up to so-and-so. Well, let me tell you, we have a facility use policy that requires that anyone who uses our facility to affirm our statement of faith and to commit to not preaching or acting in contravention of it. So if they come in and start preaching another gospel, they're done. They can't use our facility anymore. And so an openly gay marriage would be contrary to the statement of faith, and you couldn't use the facility for that. Religious mission statement. I know a lot of us are churches, so we have those already. That's not as crucial as the others, but a good thing to make sure that you've updated and have it. Gender identity policy, I started that only because in the Christian Legal Society, they did a webinar on the same subject. They did not mention gender identity. And with some of the Christian schools that I'm advising and talking to, gender identity is an issue. You have locker rooms, you have restrooms at your church. And to have a clear gender identity policy that says how you were born is how we will treat you. And just because you're a junior hire who thinks that you're a girl, young man, you're still going to change in the boys' locker room. And you're going to be on the boys' teams when it comes to sports. So that's another policy that I've drafted for my clients that I think is important, and I haven't seen in some of the other presentations that I've paid attention to. For churches, here are the things you need to focus on, specifically membership policy, even if they're voting or non-voting, the membership policy. Once again, affirming the statement of faith, the statement on marriage, and the other statements that you've drafted. Marriage policy, same thing. Funeral. Who is allowed to be married at your church? At my last event last week, I had someone mention how the Assemblies of God is saying it's members only. Only members can get married, no one else. And I have not drafted my policies that way. I've made them more open-ended. They do have to affirm the statement of faith, but many of the churches that I work with consider it potentially a ministry. I've got one church that I've talked to, and he lets family members of members also get married, no matter where they are in their faith, because he knows he needs to reach out to them. He requires that they go through marriage counseling with him, but he's willing to marry them. And so to restrict it just to members would be too restrictive for how he sees his ministry through the marriage policy. But making sure that they affirm the statement of faith is critical, because that's how we're going to draw the line that no, we can't do a same-sex marriage because it's against our policy. Funeral policy, same thing. Ordination policies, this was something else that I've not heard talked about anywhere else. For churches that are independent and have their own ordination certificates, licensing that they're doing, there has to be an affirmation of the statement of faith, the statement on marriage, because these ministers are going out under your name. This is something that AOI has to think about, Nathan, is what are the churches that, have the AOI logo on their website, hold themselves out as an AOI minister? Where's the line drawn? Can they do a same-sex marriage? What does that mean for their ordination? What does that mean for their license? What does that mean for their certification as a minister under AOI? I don't know if you guys do ordaining or licensing, but the way I'm drafting those policies is that if they violate the statement of faith or the statement on marriage or the statement on gender identity, it's an automatic revocation of their licensure, of their certificate, of their card, and their ordination. And they're no longer ordained through our organization, and we don't support that because it's another gospel. And as AOI gets bigger and bigger, this is, something that you guys are going to face. And so to have those policies, or to at least make sure that your membership, the people that are affiliated with you, are saying, hey, we see this statement of faith and it's broad. It fits a lot of us, but we do see that a man and a woman, that's what marriage means. And they affirm that. So Christian schools, I don't know if there's anybody in here with Christian schools. I'll run through this quick, but and I'll email this list to you as well. You're going to get this as a PDF. Admissions policy, code of conduct, religious instruction notice, just making sure that they know ahead of time that that there's going to be religious instruction. At the law school I went to, Regent University, we had a 5-minute devotional before every class. Being a Christian, it was a Christian devotional. Being a Christian was not a prerequisite. I had Hindu classmates. It was primarily Christian classmates. I had Hindu classmates. I had secular classmates, but they knew coming to school there that religious instruction was part of the deal because they made that known up front. Student, faculty, athletic handbooks, once again, getting into that gender identity, see that as a bottom policy. Very important for schools like I talked about earlier. I just want to briefly mention, I have 2 packages that I've put together. You'll remember that I said at the beginning, I want to help clients, I want to help churches, I want to help ministries as affordably as I can. So I've put together 2 flat fee packages. That's all you pay. I've had a lot of issues with clients in the past who when they call me, they don't expect a $3,000 bill, a $10,000 bill at the end of the month for the work that we were doing at our firm. And it just shocked them. They weren't ready for it. And so for almost everything that I'm doing with Wilkerson Legal, it's upfront flat fees. So there's no surprises, and the church can know, here's what I pay and when to get what I need. On the left side is a do-it-yourself on steroids, $8.95. That's just me drafting the documents, getting them to you, and then you making sure that they get in the right places in your bylaws, make sure that it's incorporated into your statement of faith properly, making sure that it gets into your employment agreements, into your facility use policy. Well, the facility use policy is a part of that. And then on the right side is what I call the traditional law firm model, where you'll send me all your documents. I'll update them all. I'll review them. I'll look for any other issues that might be there. I'll be a part of the board meeting so that the board members and the other elders, depending on what you call your directors, can talk to me and have questions. And so that's for $2,495. If you have more questions about that, or you want my help, you can email me, austin@wilkersonlegal.com. I would be honored to help AOI churches. And in fact, one of my clients on the $2,495, he said, Austin, that's even a little bit less than our insurance deductible each year. He said, Austin, we see this as a risk issue, and we realize that if we don't do it, this is increasing our risk for litigation. And one of the commenters in my session last week, he said, well, Hobby Lobby, they fought it. And, my response to that is yeah, if we have deep pockets and we want to be in litigation, Hobby Lobby spent millions of dollars on that litigation, but we don't want to be there. So that's why I'm recommending that we move the, and here I am again. So the two things, remember the takeaway is that we write it down now. And that as we're writing it down, we're moving it from the secular side over to the spiritual side so that there's no confusion that this is a spiritual issue. And if you want, type in your questions now. I'm going to start answering them. I'm going to check my email and look at them. But so with these documents, we're making it very clear. Marriage is a spiritual issue. It's a faith issue. It's a statement faith issue. And then we're also doing it before the issue comes up. So to avoid that claim of discrimination, we're doing it now. We're not doing it after we've had an issue at church. We're doing it now. And so that's the risk avoidance, because there will be a church that's sued. It'll probably be a ministry first, because that's less protected than a church. And then it's going to be a church, and then it's going to be everywhere. You can't not allow same-sex marriage in your facility, period. That's the legal strategy. We have the First Amendment. We have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, which will protect us. And yeah, I will argue those for my clients that end up in court over these issues. But even better is a signed employment agreement that says, I understand that there's a statement of faith here, a statement on marriage, and I affirm it, and I agree to abide by it. You send me that document, I'll send that to opposing counsel, and we'll be done with it, rather than arguing constitutional law to each other. Let me check my email. I know some emails came in. See what questions there are.
Hey, while you're reading that, Austin, for that $2,495, how long does that get them access to you? Is there a timeline on that?
No. See, that's the thing, Nathan. This is the other thing that I always mention. I had clients who were terrified to call me. They would stop calling me because I was billing by the hour at the firm I was at, and they're an amazing firm. They're the best. I loved working for them, but there would be issues where I would realize that clients were slowing down their communication to me because they realized, hey, this email costs $90.
Right.
It's just for him to read it and respond to it. This phone call, we're going to spend the first 15 minutes of me paying him, and we're going to be catching up and talking and getting context. And so the flat fee is until it's done. And if there's issues that arise later, I mean, certainly if there's litigation on it, it would be a new matter. But if they say, hey, Austin, we noticed this, and this, can you just make a quick update to it? It looks like you just forgot to put the period at the end. 6 months down the road, 10 years down the road. Absolutely. All that's included. Getting these documents right for the church. That's that, of course, I'm not going to do them every year for 10 years. You get the point.
Right. Totally.
I'm not making that promise, but we're going to get them right, and we're going to do all the work. We're going to do all the communicating that's necessary to make sure that it's right now.
Awesome.
So stick with me. I don't know if you remembered when you were registering, I promised 5 points on how you should respond. And I'll talk about those 5 points in just a second. So I've got an email here. That's just registration. Bear with me. There looks like there's about 7 or 8 emails here. Let me work through them. Can you check our bylaws for us? I don't know what in regards. Absolutely. If you want me to look at any language you may have already put in it in regards to same-sex marriage, I'd be happy to take a look at it, give you my thoughts. And certainly you'll see from my list, I'm saying that it's more than just a bylaw issue. It's more than just getting an extra clause in there. If that's all you do, well, at least you have something. But I want to move it out of just a corporate, because if you remember what's in your bylaws is voting, quorum, when you're going to meet during the year, how many times you're going to meet. These are secular issues. A judge can tell you whether or not you had a meeting in March at the beginning of the year or not, if that's in your bylaws. What a judge can't tell you is what does your statement of faith mean in regards to what the Bible means. And so, yes, send me your bylaws. And
yeah, definitely. Even from what I've heard, it definitely needs to be more than just something that you guys listening out there, more than just bylaws. Like the facility thing is huge. The employee thing is huge. You really need to make sure that you protect yourself from every area that could possibly, be called into question later. So the more you can protect yourself now, then the better you'll be down the road for sure.
Yeah. And the rest of them were just thank you for not keeping Nathan on the screen the whole time. So, no. And then the other question that I got was, what about volunteers from other churches that come to volunteer at a soup kitchen? The question was, should volunteers from various other churches who set groceries for the poor, should they sign a policy statement? I would definitely say your regular volunteers, yes. If you were doing a push, for example, my church here in Frisco is going to be volunteering with Royal Kids Family Camp. Some of you may know what that is. It's for foster kids and abused kids. I don't know what Royal foster camps, Royal Family Camps, and Hope Fellowship, what they're talking about between each other, but to have an agreement between you and the church would be a good recommendation, that you let them know, hey, the volunteers that you send over, we have a statement of faith. We'd like for you to let us know that your volunteers are doing that. So yes, as an attorney, I would love to have it from every single person. And if a signed statement saying, hey, I know that you're a religious organization, here's your statement of faith and your statement on marriage. I get that. And I agree to abide by it and not speak against it. That would be the best. Secondarily would be an agreement with the church, where you let the church know that's bringing the people, hey, we have a statement of faith. We know that it works with your church. But we just want to let you know that if any of the volunteers that ever comes up, we will have to enforce our policies that says they can't volunteer for us anymore. And then third, and maybe kind of right there with second, would be having an open policy that you make sure every volunteer gets, so that you give them your policies and procedures and maybe have them sign off that they've received them and they're aware of them, so that whenever you find out one of them is living in homosexual sin or in some other sin that you've determined violates your statement of faith, you can say, hey, we've made you aware of it, and we're making you aware of it now. It's not about you. We found out this is your behavior, and so we're responding accordingly. So those were the only questions. Let me hit refresh just in case there's any others, and then I'll talk about my 5 points. Nathan, do you have anything to add?
It's been good. I think, just making sure that everyone knows that there's, as much preemptiveness they can have on these issues it will be super key for the future.
Mm-hmm. So let me just briefly in closing go over my 5 steps that I'm recommending every church take. There's some resources there, but the 5 steps that I think every church has to address is, first of all, we have to seek God. And let me make sure I'm presenting this to everyone. First and foremost, we need to hear God on this. This is a spiritual issue. This is for the people that are going through homosexual sin, are facing same-sex attraction. This is a spiritual issue, and we need to pray. And then as a church board, you need to decide, where do we stand on this issue? And you need to update your corporate documents and policies accordingly. And here's the big takeaway: faithfully enforce your policies and standards. This may be my top legal tip of all time for my clients. It's at least one of my top 5, so I felt comfortable saying that. If you're going to have a written policy or procedure or standard or bylaws, please enforce them. Please work under them. Please use them. And here's the deal. I know all of us don't. I know that. And I know that it's hard to remember, are we sure we have a quorum? Are we sure that this is still the board member? Did we really elect them? And go? But those things matter whenever it gets sticky. So if you're sloppy on the front end, once again, you're going to pay for it on the back end. So if you are going to adopt policies and procedures, which I'm recommending, enforce them. So you can't say, oh, that's our music pastor, we can't afford to lose him, but for this person over in the children's church, we're going to kick them out. That doesn't work. That's discrimination. And then the last point I had, you saw there, was number 5, love. And God is love. I think that the way we're going to reach those that are struggling with sin of all kinds, it's not going to be through a Supreme Court case. It's not going to be, I'm getting preachy, I'm sorry. It's not going to be through a Supreme Court case. It's not going to be through policies, through writing enough paper. It's going to be by loving people. That's where I stand on it. I know that's where Pastor Olin stands on it, because I know his heart. I know Nathan, and I know Shady Grove, and I know that, we're an outpost in the desert for people that are looking for truth, for healing, for love. That's what our churches are. And I mean, maybe that's even what the Oasis is about in the name. I don't know, but that's it. Thank you so much for being a part. Nathan, if you have anything to add here at the end, I'm done.
No, just thank you for guys that have joined, and anyone that watches later. And please just feel free to utilize Austin as a resource, whether you've just got some more questions or whether you want to use him to review your documents or get them made up. Just do that. Utilize the things that are at your disposal. And just glad you joined us today.
Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. That's it. I'm going to send out a PDF. I'm going to send out this video after I edit it a little bit. And of course, if you have any questions, email me, austin@wilkersonlegal.com. That's where the email will come from. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate you guys.
Yep.
Bye.